Hey, Ka-Pow fam. It is Doc Solo, the director of Ka-Pow, the Comic Art Academy, the real art school for real people with real lives, taught by real industry pros. And today, I am so honored to welcome as a guest here on Art2Art, Mr. Michael Regina. You guys are going to enjoy this. I found his story and his journey very engaging. And I thought that you guys would want to hear it for yourself as a viable possible option as you pursue your story. And so, with that, let's roll the intro and dive into this Art2Art session with Mr. Michael Regina.
Hey, there we go. Hello, welcome, Mr. Regina. Thank you so much for joining me. I have to say, quite honestly, I was actually surprised as well as a little bit excited when you agreed to meet with me, especially at this. It's still dark here in Chicago, and I'm not used to people rising like me. I'm usually up and at it around 4. I'm still up and at it. I'm usually up and at it around 4:30 in the morning to get to the gym by 5. You know what I mean? And so when you gave the time, I was like, oh, okay. Because usually around after 12, I'm starting to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I hear you.
But thank you so much.
Drink has to kick in.
I know, right? I know, right? Well, thank you so much. I want to kind of give you a little backstory on why I reached out to you. And so I had been thinking personally when it came to my own creative pursuits as alternative avenues as opposed to self-publishing. And I really do believe that somehow the YouTube algorithm AI has developed telepathy. Because I did not speak it. I did not speak it. I was just mulling over it. Man, listen, I was just mulling over it. And then I sit down because every morning after my workout, I have my quiet time. And then I spend about an hour in self-development. And usually it's something with craft, business, something of that nature. And so I sit down and say, all right, let me learn something today. Let's see what YouTube has to teach me. And as soon as I clicked on YouTube, there pops your video on how you landed your agent and how you did your pitch deck. And I was like, oh, who's this guy? You know what I mean? I'm like, who's this guy? And you're just sitting there and you're just being you. And I'm like, okay, I need to talk to him because I don't think many creators, and I've been around this, again, in and around the industry going on 30 years. And admittedly, the course that you took, and your story was so fascinating, the course you took is typically not one that most people fresh out the gate even consider. You want to share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, are you talking about
traditional publishing
or mainstream traditional?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was always the goal. It was always the goal to get published, and mostly because I think I realized that part of it was that I realized that the main audience that I'm targeting, which is children, and all ages in particular, like they're not on the internet looking for books.
Right.
Like that's not, it's not like an adult who will gladly consider a self-published thing. Like kids aren't even aware that they exist, And so for me, it became, if I hope to build an audience, well, let me take a step back. I had self-published 3 books already. I did the Adamsville series and I self-published those through Kickstarter and all that stuff. Okay. And so I felt like I had kind of seen what that was capable of accomplishing. And I was like, I've sold a good number of books here, but I'm not reaching kids the way I would hope to.
Right.
And so self-publishing was always just the next step, or I'm sorry, traditional publishing was always the next step. But it also seemed like there was a really healthy publishing industry around children's graphic novels as opposed to the mainstream comic industry. which always seems like it's about to fall apart. It feels like every time you read a story, you know, now Diamond is going under and all this sort of stuff. And so whereas the kids publishing industry is like the main publishers in the world are picking up books. It's the one of the only growing sections of the bookstore is kids graphic novels. So it was like, okay, if I'm going to keep making these all ages books, this seems like the next step. And so how do I go about doing that? And thankfully, there's a very tried and true process of creating a pitch, finding an agent, letting your agent go get your book deal. So that was sort of the impetus of it. Is I'd finished Adamsville, and then it was like, okay, well, what's next? And I knew I did not want to self-publish another kid's book after that one was over. And that's sort of what got me thinking about it.
Well, that is actually very fascinating. That you quickly came to the realization. Again, I'm admittedly largely I suffer from tunnel vision sometimes when it comes to a course of action, and that has helped me. Every vice can be a virtue if not leveraged correctly, and this is what I tell a lot of my students. You know what I mean? And every virtue can become a vice if you're not careful, right? Become a blind spot.
Yeah.
And for me, I self-published my first comic back in 2004, and I kind of use it as a cautionary tale. I share that on my other YouTube channel, The Christian Creative, right? Mm-hmm. And so I published it in 2004 with really low expectations of reception, right? Mm-hmm. That didn't happen. It kind of blew up in my face and I wasn't ready for it. Right.
Like it blew up in a good way? Like
in a great way. Yeah. In a great way. Yeah. And I wasn't ready. I was a cop. I was in a car, squad car, 4 kids, mortgage. I just wanted to do something that I was passionate about, give my kids a competitive alternative to some of the stuff that I just didn't agree with that was out there, you know, yeah. And, so I was actually trying to meet the burden at the time of Christian bookstores. Back then, they were kind of like the gatekeepers, right? Yeah. But I wanted something that had broad market appeal at the simultaneously, right? That wasn't, you know, exclusive to just that demographic. And so, but for me, since starting that way, and then stepping back from it, again, I share that, and we won't go into that. stepping back from it, and kind of licking my wounds, and then restarting it. I came back with that same goal, right? And it hasn't been until recently that honestly desperation kind of kicked in, because I'm getting older, you know, 8 grandchildren, you know, all my children are adults, you know, and so I'm on the other side of that, and wanting to leave a legacy. And I'm like, okay, what are the viable options to get my ideas out there? I've had enough validation. And it's funny, when you get tunnel vision, you ignore all the signs around you. Right? You know, I have family members that have lucrative publishing deals with traditional publishing. You dig what I'm saying? I just bought the entire set of Bone to read it because I saw a video from Matt with 4 T's, you know, about how they went.
Such a good video.
That's a great video, right?
So I think I know what you want. If I'm thinking about the one you're talking about, the history of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great video. Watched that video, went out and bought the entire set of Bone, you know what I mean? And still not clicking, right? You know what I mean? That this, you know, this is a potential option. But then I came across you, and for some reason, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was your demeanor. I don't know if it was the way you told it. You know what I mean? Things just kind of clicked into place. And I'm like, I got to talk to this guy. I said, because this is stuff, you know, we have students all over the country. And even though we're a small school, we are, you know, kind of spread out. And I'm always looking for ways, because to your point, you made a very valid point. It always seems as if the comic industry is ready to implode, right? The traditional mainstream industry. And so with your own personal experience. Again, I want you guys to check out this video. Please check out this video. Check out his channel. I'll leave a link in the description. You will thoroughly enjoy it. Now, I went through all of your videos, just FYI.
Oh.
You know, my little 45 to an hour self-improvement session and craft mastery turned into click Michael Regina.
Watching
Click
me.
Michael Regina. Because I wanted to hear what you had to say, and I'm so grateful that you decided to share your experience. So you said that you started off. Tell us what age did you really start to take a real interest in art? Give us a little bit of overview of your journey to this point, just in case those may not go to your YouTube channel. You know, some people, you know, they kind of click and they get stuck and they go do other things. Just in case, while they're here, let's give them some insight.
I mean, comics were just always comics. I got serious about in third grade. So, but I mean, I was always drawing. I can't remember a time that I wasn't drawing. But comics specifically in third grade, I was when I realized like, oh, this is a thing that could be a job. I think I always joke. I'm like, I think up to that point, I thought it was just like a thing. Comics just existed. I didn't think people made them or something. I don't know. It was weird. But then, I mean, it really took a kid at school who had made his own comic and was sitting there, you know, with it on the bus and showed me that he made it. And I was like, oh, I could tell stories and make my own comic books. That's really cool, you know? And I remember like I went home, I got on my bike, I rode to the grocery store, which I was not supposed to do, but I had to do it. I mean, and I came home and made a comic that night. And like, it's never not been the thing. You know what I mean? Like even if I've thought about going into another career or trying something different, comics has always been, if I could do anything, it would be comic books, you know? And just continuing to maintain that feeling, whether or not it's my job or not, has been the struggle and the blessing, I guess, you know? Because it can certainly be difficult, as you know, like trying to juggle a lot of different things at once. But yeah, it kind of goes all the way back to the third grade, and then along the way, obviously, the industry has changed so much. There was times I thought it wasn't right for me because, you know, we were talking about this briefly before the show. I'm a Christian, and there's a lot of stuff within the mainstream industry that I do not want to be a part of.
Yes.
And I did not, and especially as a person who wasn't the writer, I knew I might be asked to draw, and I didn't want to.
Right.
And so part of the reason I learned to write was to control what was being put out, you know, so that I had some control over the thing I was going to draw. Right. And so it's really, I'm really thankful that the comic industry has moved over into the children's book industry, because I don't know if I would have, I mean, I guess self-publishing could have continued to stay an option, but very quickly discovered that making these kinds of stories was the thing I really enjoyed. And I'm so grateful that the comic industry is caught up to like, oh, we can tell great stories for kids and make comics for kids. And it doesn't have to be superheroes and all that stuff.
That's incredible. What it brings to mind is there's another interview when I know you're very busy, but if you ever get a chance where I sit down with my mentor that I met at the animation studio that was here in Chicago's south suburbs, and for me, he was a 20-year vet of the industry, of the mainstream when I met him. Right. Mm-hmm. I just got out of the military, and I share this on the Cop to Comics playlist here on YouTube. My journey. I'm still, piecemealing it out because it's kind of big, right? Because I didn't have the typical journey to this point. But anyway, I had to when you spoke about the trying the industry and you saw the trends and having a sense of agency of what you created, that was made evident to me once I got the green light that I was good enough for the industry. Does that make sense? Right? My first job offer that point, that inciting incident where an editor doesn't give you a critique, but he gives you a business card and says, "Call me."
Oh, no.
Right? It was that's what happened, right, with Superman, and so and I was like 24. But by that time, I'd already been mentored and really schooled on how the sausage was made, right? And this is not an indictment against the industry. I tell our students, whatever your goal is, just know what it costs to get it, right? Just be very well aware, educate yourself. And if a pivot is required, be prepared to. And so because that's how my mentor did it with me. He didn't badmouth the industry. He didn't slander it. You know what I mean? But he's like, well, kid, I'm here at the animation studio for a reason. Right. You know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, well, what's that look like? And so by the time I was good enough a few years later, my dynamic, I don't know, you have children, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How many children do you have?
I have 3.
You have 3. Okay. So this is my hypothesis, and feel free to correct me, but this is the broad stroke. I love exchange. I'm not above correction. Okay. Listen, kiddies, stay teachable. Right? That's what I tell everybody. Stay teachable. That is the number one rule of art.
And creativity in our home at the moment, honestly.
Stay teachable.
Quoted proverbs like, the wise loves instruction and the fool despises.
Yes, absolutely. And so, but this is what I observed, and he kind of brought my attention, even with his own situation, is that most, and that's when I looked at my circle, most of them now are 30-year mainstream Marvel, DC, Riot Games professionals. When I broke through, when we were all trying to get validated, I was in a unique position because by the time I was 24, I had 4 children. You know what I mean? And the industry, what I learned from him was like, kid, where you are, this may not work out for you. You know what I mean? Financially, economically, at the time, artists, were still kind of, I want to say the dark ages, where you just got paid for the work. You didn't have royalties. They were still fighting for that. Unless you had an exclusive contract, there were no health and medical benefits. 4 kids and a wife, so getting books canceled and trying to find the next gig. I knew by the time I was good enough that it just didn't fit my life. Where all my peers, most of them were single or did not have children until later. The ones that were able to pursue it, they were able to couch surf and, you know what I mean? Yeah. Sleep in their cars. I'm like, I can't do that, for this dream, What was that like for you? Did you have to go take on side hustles, work another job while you were pursuing your creative pursuits?
Yeah, this is something I talk about a lot on my channel. I still work a full-time regular job. So it for me, having the family was like in the goals of my life. It was like, I want a family. I want to make comics. Right. And so it was never a choice. Like, it was always like, I'm willing to do what I have to do to have a family, and then the comic stuff can come along. If it wants to come along. And but the odd thing is I think when I had my daughter, like, it became, I realized, like, oh, I better get on it is the best way to put it. It's like
lights a fire on you, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it was. I had a good job at the time, and I still work for that same company all these years later. And but I was like, well, if I'm gonna, if I want to transition and make books full time, I need to go ahead and get after it. And then because this was very early on in my career at that company, and I tried really hard to get a book deal, right. And I was like, if I can get this book deal, I can quit, I can go do this. And it just wasn't coming together, and that was frustrating, But looking back on it, I just was not ready. Like, my art wasn't ready. I wasn't ready as a person, all these things. But it's why I've talked so much on my channel to other creatives about the idea of, like, you can, I guess what shifted for me was I believe I'm here to tell stories, and that doesn't mean it has to be my job. And so I don't, and the discontentment I felt as a young man was that it wasn't my job, so therefore I must have failed. Therefore I must not be good enough. What am I doing? You know, I'm unhappy. I don't have this thing that I want. And then I would look at like my family and I'm like, what are you even talking about? You know, you have a family, you have, you know, like you're blessed, you know?
Yes.
And I just realized that, that the book stuff could fit. If I was going to do it, I should focus on making it fit within where my life was. And it's kind of worked out. I mean, I've managed to make, 5 books. It's taken me 13 years to do it. But that's actually a pretty standard rate of production in the comic, in the graphic novel. Like that's about 2.5 years a book. And, that's pretty typical for a graphic novel in the industry. It takes about 2.5 years. So it's not really cost me a ton in speed, maybe some in sleep and rest and feeling overloaded. Right. But that's about it. And that's something I'm actually wrestling with a lot right now as I'm in between projects is like, what's next? Do I want to keep doing it this way? How do I continue to move forward if this doesn't become my job? That sort of thing. But so, yeah, I don't know if I deviated from your question a little bit, but that
no, that's what this is about, man. This is not scripted. This is real, just conversation, because there's power in profound education in hearing your perspective, hearing anyone's perspective, especially when it comes to something as specific and unique as this. Because what I love about what you said is. And correct me if I'm wrong, and if I oversimplify, but you became pliable in how you perceived it, right? It went from this monolithic all or nothing thing to wait a second. I'm really winning. This is not a failure in any real sense. You know what I'm saying? I'm not lessened by the fact that I have a family. Actually, I'm enriched by it, right? And the fact that I have to provide for my family, that's not a curse. That's a blessing. And the fact that I'm able to provide and able to do this. I think a lot of times, especially in today's social media environment where, and I'm doing a video here about, the death of the influencer. People want real stories like this. They don't want fabricated, I'm at the top of my game, I'm balling. You dig what I'm saying? I'm doing the thing you wish you were me, right? You know what I'm saying? People want real stories. Like, wait a second, hold up. Because we're having, especially up and coming young people and creators, I believe they're being unreasonably hard on themselves in many ways because they think they're not measuring up, or they think, I've had this with my own adult children. My baby is 27, right? My eldest is in his mid 30s, right? And so, but even they, from millennial to Gen Z, they've wrestled with this comparison curse. And I'm like, baby, that's not real. That's not real, right? And if it is real, that's their path, their journey. You have your own. Embrace it. That's what I'm hearing for you. That excites me because I've wrestled with that, personally. And you are encouraging me in this interview because for years I have wrestled with. I've always been very satisfied with being a husband and being a father and having a wife and a family that loves me. The wealth therein is not lost on me. But there's also this, because we're so complex, simultaneously there's this nagging at the back of my skull when I see the guys that I started off with. My students know this. My small circus, we used to call ourselves the Artist Alley Cats, right? For Artist Alley, right? And we would meet at these cons every year in the season, and we would just kind of compare notes and see where everybody was, and everybody's trying to hustle. They're all now 30-year mainstay objective professionals with volumes of work behind them. You understand what I'm saying? And can demand guest privileges at conventions and, you know what I mean? Have traveled the world. I was a cop for 30 years. I had to leave the animation studio because I was an unpaid intern on welfare with 2 kids and one on the way. Coming out the military, you know what I mean? But I wanted it so bad, and it was an opportunity because the director of the studio knew me when I was born. My mom had me in high school at 15, and she was a part of a Bible study group, and he was the head of that Bible study group. And then he graduated and went to work for Hanna-Barbera, you know what I mean? But he remembered my mom bringing me there because my mom had me, as a sophomore, right? Mm-hmm. And that fast forward, I'm out the military, and my mother and godmother's like, hey, do you remember, McClanahan? I'm like, no, should I? But he remembered me. But he had come back from Hanna-Barbera and opened up an animation studio in the south suburbs. Mm-hmm. He's like, kid, you've been drawing since you were like 3. He's like, you still draw? I'm like, yeah, but I have no direction. And he just, why don't you come, sharpen some pencils, fetch some coffee, learn, haunt, but stay out the way. You know what I'm saying? And it was transcendent for me. That I saw that this is the first time I saw it as a possibility because these were people doing it. And he paired me with my mentor specifically because my mentor was the only resident transplant from comics, and so all that to say this, because I was on welfare, my mentor took me under his wing because he kind of was familiar with where I was at the time, being on public aid, but he also knew that I was there 3 days a week, and it took me almost 2 hours to get there on public transit. And I was there faithfully, so he kind of liked my grind. You know what I mean? But as you know, responsibilities dictated that I had to pivot. And so when Chicago police came, great pay, benefits, I'm like, hey, I got to take it. But my friends, my peers, they're pursuing this thing. And so I'm in the background, and I'm happy for them. I'm not a hater. I'm happy. Yeah. Every time I would see their name on the title, I'll give them a call. We still talk to this day. I give them a call. Hey, man, I saw that cover you did. I saw that story, blah, blah, blah. I bought 5 copies because I knew, that's my little contribution. I dropped, 5 copies, But still part of me was there was a pain there. Because the reality was, what a lot of people didn't know was, out of this group of exceptional professionals, and they are incredible pros and people, I was actually the first one to break through the ceiling. And that's where my came through. Yeah. It was like that could have been me thing, But now fast forward, I'm retired, still relatively young, at the grandparent stage, and now I feel like I have the green lit. All right, let me see what I can do with whatever God gives me less. You know what I mean? Which is why we're here today. So hearing you be so honest and pragmatic, that's a message that a lot of people aren't getting. Especially a lot of they're not getting it. We have. People look at our logo and they think that kids, right? Most of our students are over the age of 25, all the way up to 50. You understand what I'm saying? And so that they wrestle with, is it too late? Can I level up? It took X amount of years for this person to get here, and can it be me?
Yeah.
Speak to that. Have you ever speak to that?
Yeah, I don't. This is actually. So when I thought about starting my YouTube channel and talking to people, this was the message that is probably like the central tentpole message of my whole channel, which is success is not the money.
Wow, say that again, please. One more time so I can get a clip of that.
Success is not the money.
I love that.
It's not the money. And here's the reason it's not the money. It's not that it's not great. And Lord knows I would love to have it, it's just but not have it so that I have the money, but have it so that I could be free to focus on this, free to focus on it, give it all my time. But not because I want the money. It's just the reality of, like, if you want to do it full time, if I ever hope to do it full time, money is a factor, right? And what I realized was that I cannot control that outcome, right? I cannot control, like, I've watched some, even my friends who are like published, and they'll complain about like, oh, the publisher didn't do this for me. The book didn't succeed because they didn't put anything behind me. And, you know, sure, that's a factor of it. But the reality is an audience is either going to read your book or they're not going to read your book, you know? And if your book is good and catches on with your audience, that happens organically. Like, you know what I mean? It's not, it's a thing that's out of your control. Right. And so I talk a lot on my channel about like focusing on the things you can control and doing those with excellence, and then let the other things take care of themselves. Like I can safely say with every book I've made, at least the last two with Penguin, because Adamsville was a little bit different. I had I could get into the whole Adamsville thing a bit as well. Like, I'm very proud of that, but really for me, Adamsville was about learning how to actually make the books, you know? And I was just like, how am I going to get a publisher to even publish me? I've never even made one of these things. I've never even proven I can do it. I should maybe go do that. And so I look back on Adamsville with a lot of fondness, but really the last two books I've done with Penguin are the ones that I'm like, I gave both of these books everything I had in me. There's not an ounce of regret in them. I have done my part. What happens from here is not in my control, you know? Right. And in learning to accept that and be fine with that as the success is most of it, right? Because a lot of when people get that frustration or that feeling, that could have been me, like you said, that's not a thing in your control.
Right.
You know, you can't control whether or not you have an audience that likes your stuff and wants to pick it up and read it. All you can do is produce it, put it out into the world, and then see what happens. You know, and you can continue to hone your craft, and you continue to do that. I talked recently on my channel about this concept called the dip. It was from a book by Seth Godin. I don't know if you watched that video. But the sort of like three phases I think people find themselves in, and there's the sort of can I do this phase. It's entirely self-controlled. Like, can I do the work? You can control that. You got to sit down, you got to do it, you got to produce it. And that stage is like the one a lot of people will find themselves in, because they're like, I don't know how to do this, and I should probably learn how to. And then there's this middle phase that I think I'm coming out of, which is this phase of, can I do this at a high professional level enough that a publisher would be able to recognize that and say, let's publish them. That gets a little bit more in the middle of the road, right? Like, I'm focusing on this, but I need somebody else to validate that. Again, I can't control that. All I can do is work hard enough. And then, so I've managed to get through those, and now it's in this phase of like, be undeniably great. And that part, it's like, it's almost entirely out of my control, you know? Right. But the reason I think that part becomes important is like, when we talk about like, can I do this for a living? Can I make money at it? Can I be popular enough to sustain it? Like, that phase is almost entirely out of your control, you know, other than you doing the grind of making the work and promoting it and going out into the world. And like, you can put feet to action, or, you know, action to your intentions. But I know authors who do all the actions, and then they go in front of schools and they don't sell that many books, or it doesn't go that far, you know, because something about it just didn't take off. And you have to be able to look at that and not take it personally, I guess, and say, it's not because I stink. It's just for whatever reason, this didn't click. And you might have done great work and it not. I mean, how many times do we talk about a movie that we think is amazing and nobody talks about it or cares? Does it make it not amazing because it didn't have a gigantic audience, or did it just not connect on a broad way? I don't know. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's that. It's mostly like just learning to focus on the things I could control, and seeing success as like, did I do that? Right. Kind of to your point, like, I was able to look back and see, I had friends who were working full time in comics, and I knew how much money they were probably making. And I knew like that was not a reality for me to be able to provide for a family and earn that. Right. And so it's like, okay. And I would also see the financial turmoil they would go into, because it was so unreliable, and just like the emotional stress they were in. And I was just like, I just kind of want to make books, man. Like, I don't need all this other Like,
Right.
I think this is it, like, I'm coming back to it. It's like, I realized that the financial pressure was keeping me from making my best work. Because it became about being desperate to make a living. And so you're willing to like scramble and figure this thing out. Whereas if I take the money out of the equation and I'm just like, hey, my job provides for me, I'm good.
Right.
I'm now free to go, okay, what is the thing I want to make? I can just make great stuff,
Right.
And then if I ever am blessed to do it full time, it will have been because I built it on the right foundation. You know what I mean? Like it was built on a foundation of the direction I wanted to do, the way I wanted to do it. And if that all comes together at some point, that's awesome. And it wouldn't have been from a place of desperation, I guess.
That's powerful. That is so powerful. I'm listening to you. When I tell you, dude, you are like pouring into my soul. No, seriously, and I'm so grateful for it, because my students see me and people see me at shows, but they, as we all know, you never know what someone's really wrestling with internally, right? For me, as you say, finances, depending on where you are in your journey, they are a real factor that has to be considered, right? That has to be considered. And I try to nudge my students and those that trust us with this stage of their journey in a way that it doesn't set them up for failure. Okay. Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, it's got to be a very balanced message. You know what I mean? Where, but at least consider this. I don't want to step on your passions and your dreams, but make sure that the Bible tells us, what man builds a house and first doesn't count up the cost, right? You don't pursue a goal and you don't know what that's going to cost you and what it really looks like. And so for me now, I'm at the stage where money is irrelevant. I just want my stuff out there. I'm fortunate to have, a well-informed and educated but small circle, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. That's an invitation. That they're all like, Solo, you got to get this stuff out there. You know what I mean? This stuff is really good, because I'm hard on myself. Like I said, when I released War in Paradise in 2004, I had no expectation of what happened, right? I just wanted something that my kid, who's now 30, could take to school, that I knew was wholesome, that espoused our belief system, that their friends would like to, right? Yeah. I knew Bible man wasn't it. You understand what I'm saying? Right? And so that was a very low bar for me, and so, sure. But when it hit, the response, I was so unprepared for that, because that's not where my head was. It wasn't about money. It was about my kid. Right. Yeah. And I was challenged by my wife to say, because, I grew up in a very strict denomination, Church of God in Christ, Pentecostal. Right. And my parents were elders, so they were high up, right, in the church. And so it was during the time of the Satanic Panic where everything was the devil. And you know what I mean?
One of my favorite games was The Bad Guy. I love
Right. Oh, the gosh, they were burning those back then. You know what I mean? And so, but luckily I had some very forward-thinking parents that saw my creative gift and were like, okay, there's nothing that we're exposing them to that comes close to the execution and the creative quality of this other stuff. Let's do this with some watchful eyes and let him, grow, because this is what triggers him. And so when I became an adult, granted, as we do often, especially as young parents, we kind of rage against some of the things our parents did, but part of us still clings to it because we know that it was really good for us. We just probably didn't like their execution or the way it made us feel at the time, right? Yeah. And so when I became a parent, I was a little bit more laxed, but still very watchful, and when my son brought stuff to me home, or I won't go into what it was because it was a very popular card game, I got why he loved it. I got it. He was an artist kid. He grew up in the culture. We have a YouTube channel that is much bigger than this one called Generation Geek, where he and I, father and son, 2 generations of geek, pro dad, son super fan, and we do our commentary. But at the time when he was a little man, I knew why he liked it. I knew why everybody liked it. It wasn't lost on me, but the message that it sent, I thought it was sinister. I'm like, hold up, this is not cool. Right. And I'm not that parent. I'm not going to be my parents. Right. I'm not going to do that. But this is a little bit too overt for my taste. Right. And so when I created it, it was more mission based than an expectation of being well received, if that makes sense. Right. Yeah. And so, but now at this stage, the mission has changed. Now it's about legacy for me. I want to leave something behind for my grandkids. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get that.
If some of my IPs are fortunate enough to be recognized, for anything, however menial, just it being out in the world, so they can say, hey, our ancestor Solo, he did this, he built this, he had a school, he had, it's even like YouTube, this right here, I kind of admonish certain creators that are overtly vulgar or negative. And I challenge them, do you realize that your grandkids and great grandkids might have to carry what you say now?
Yeah.
Because of where we are? You know what I mean? Are you just trying to grab the buck and be an incendiary? So all this stuff kind of matters to me. I'm so legacy focused. And all that to say this, we tell our students, regardless of where you are, money cannot be the driving factor. It'll
force you to do a lot of things.
It'll force you to do a lot of things. It'll force you to compromise. You spoke to agency, and I want to touch on that because that really resonated. Again, I'm really vibing with you for some reason. Thank you. I've been called. So I got doxxed. All right. Let me be clear. I got doxxed. I got doxxed by a radical comics group that shall remain nameless. I will call them the Gators. Okay. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, right?
Okay. I know who you're speaking of.
So I got doxxed.
I've done it to a few of my friends as well.
Yes. So the Gators doxed me because I have a segment on my son and I's channel called Solo Says, right? And I'm not one to cast aspersions, but I am one to call a spade, right? Especially when your actions aren't in alignment with your claims, right? And so anyway, this group doxed me. They did a live stream reaction video to my commentary. And all I did was challenge the head of their movement, which is gratefully starting to die, right? I challenged the head of their movement and with his claims. And I said, don't you know that all this stuff that you're putting out there, this bill that you're accruing, your kids and grandkids are going to have to cash that in one day? Mm-hmm. Do you think about that when you get on here? You understand? Where's the line? Where does integrity fall creatively, legacy wise? Can you speak to that? Because you seem to be very conscious of what you are not only creating, but what you're leaving behind.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, like, I know if I really wanted attention, I could lean into my peculiar belief systems that would incite certain groups of people and rally other people behind me. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's just the way the internet seems to work. Like, it polarizes us in a way that's unhealthy. Mm-hmm. But well, one, it's like where, to be totally candid, it's like where is my, where ultimately, if I'm going to be like truly candid, it's like I know I'm accountable to God for whatever.
Yes, Absolutely.
And I want to be able to stand behind whatever I do as an example to my children, to other people, that like, this is what a godly person should behave and act like. And, Paul says, make every effort to be at peace with all men.
Amen. Yes.
And then there's another passage where it says, live a quiet life.
Yes. Yes.
And so, I'm willing, I guess, let me like wrap it all together and just say, like, I'm willing for people to dislike me because I'm a Christian in the gospel. Mm-hmm. I'm not willing to have people dislike me because of my political views.
Thank you.
Or my industry thoughts.
Yes.
It's like, and like to your point, kind of what you said in the very beginning, I can't remember if we were on already, but like, we have more in common than we have not in common. Mm-hmm. As people, and we tend to choose these very divisive things to talk about because it clicks or whatever. But it's like, if I probably knew everything about your political views and everything, like, we would intensely disagree probably on certain things.
Right.
But like, is that what we should be focusing our energy on, or on things that, like, or should we be focusing our energy on like building each other up, and talking about things we like together, and so it is sort of a conscious, like, what do I want to put out into the world? I know I could probably grow my YouTube channel like crazy if I did these things or that things, but it's just not my point. And to your point though, I've unfortunately lost 2 or 3 of my friends in the last couple of years. Just like very close friends have passed away. And that forces you to sit back and go like, what am I doing?
Right.
And to your point of legacy, it's like, my books are a piece of me that my children will have.
Yes.
And that they can share. They can read my books and go, this is what Dad thought about loss, or what Dad thought about how to deal with fear, or Dad, like, I had this reconciliation recently where it's like, I'm not a preacher, but my books are my sermons.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to preach.
Oh, I get it.
I'm like, it's as much as I'm like, this is me. Are you familiar with Brian McDonald?
I am.
Brian McDonald.
I am. Mm-hmm.
His saying about stories convey survival information.
Yes.
Like, that's what they exist to do. And so that's what I mean when I say that, is like, I'm trying to put survival information out into the world.
Right.
Like, hey, like, and for instance, in the Sleepover, we're supposed to be there for each other.
Yes.
When people are going through difficulty, you're not supposed to retreat into yourself.
Right.
And you need to be there with one another. I believe in that fully, and so just thinking about these things, and the Deepwater Creek that's coming out in August, the same thing of like, there's things we can't control. How do we support people going through things that we can't fix? How do you stand by, how do you stand by somebody who's going through illness that you can't fix? And how do you, all these sorts of things, So yeah, I think a lot about making sure that whatever I leave behind, I'm willing to stand behind 20, 30 years from now. To your point, like 20, 30 years from now, all the political stuff we were frustrated about now, who the heck knows?
It'll be something else.
Yeah. I mean, I look back on certain things I believe now in the things I said when I was in college, and I cringe at it.
Right.
Like, I can't believe I thought that, or I can't.
Same.
Like, those things evolve over time as we learn more, and as we get more nuance into our opinion, or we see that the thing that we were standing for wasn't what we thought it was. And so, yeah, I don't know. I do think about this a lot. Even the YouTube channel being something that it's funny you're saying like this. I literally think, like, if I'm ever were to be gone, my kids would have my YouTube channel as a thing where they can go back and watch it and be like, that's what Dad thought. And you can listen to Dad.
That's
talk
powerful.
about good things,
Yes.
I 100% think about those things. That's kind of funny. I literally do.
But that's that. I think that as, heads of our tribes and high priests of our home, that is our core responsibility. I'm sorry, you guys, but I've always told you guys that I'm a born again Christian. I've never hidden that. I got a whole channel dedicated just where I can spew that uninhibited. But it comes out. What's in you comes out, and
It's my life, man.
it's my life. It's who I am. It's the core. It's my core operating system. Our students. We're starting to post the reviews from our students, and people, they're wondering, is this too good to be true? I'm like, all you're seeing is the integrity mandated by my faith. I'm not trying to get something to you. I'm not trying to be predatory. You understand that if there's anything different from what we're doing and from what the testimonies we're getting, that's what it is. That's the secret sauce, right? Because it makes a difference in how you navigate and how you approach everything. You understand? Yeah. And yes, we know that we're not going to please everyone in our creative pursuits. But what I love about, especially like the Sleepover, you guys have to check this out. It is really good. My granddaughter, hopefully I have the photos playing now in post. 8 years old, ADHD. Read it in one sitting. That's when I knew. Nice. I'm like, okay. She'll draw for hours. She'll stay on her tablet for hours. I've never seen her read for that long. And when I told her I was talking to you today, she's upstairs sleeping right now. She's like, Chipa, nice. Are you gonna let me talk to him? I'm like, no, not this time, Harper. Tell him I really like his book. Does he have another one? I said, yes, he has another one coming out. So that was powerful to me. And I'm not saying that to flattery. Those who know me know I'm not a flatterer. I speak objective truth. But that got me. And admittedly, I'll be honest with you, I haven't made it all the way through it. That's why I was so impressed. I'm like, you read all of that? Because I have so many things going on between the school, my studio. You know what I mean? I'm prepping for the interview, reaching out to other guys. I'm wearing a lot of hats as a woman. The other YouTube channels, 3 YouTube channels and associated social media. So it's a lot. But when I saw that she couldn't put it down, see, I'm always reading the room. You know what I mean? She's your target. You hit the target. She's 8. You know what I'm saying? It's 8 to 2. I'm like, I may not be your target. She's your target. And I did a comparative analysis, just kind of late. I went to the library and I bought other graphic novels in that same demographic. And I said, Harper, what do you think about these? Is it another sleep? She literally said, is there another Sleepover? I said, okay.
Oh, wow.
I was like, wow. And I mean, there was DC superhero girls, something girl with magic. And I'm like, I just wanted to see. You dig what I'm saying? I'm like, okay, there's something about this that really resonated with her. Well, resonated with what I've read thus far, and I'm going to finish it probably this week, was your approach on loss. Right, experiencing loss. That was a powerful message that I think really hit the mark because I lost my mom 3 years ago, and thank you. And my grandchildren are now. There's a first brush with death. You know what I mean? Yeah. As a kid, right? And my mom was a true matriarch. She was the core of our family, entitled to every honor and the utmost reverence and a rare beauty. And so helping them try to navigate that, my kids are now older, right? I still had to help them. But when I saw the Sleepover and what it was about, I'm like, this is a powerful message that kids need to grasp as soon as possible, because it's a reality that eventually they're going to face. Whether it be a grandparent, whether it be a friend in an accident, this is pulled from your personal experience, I believe, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So, the very premise of the book, like the beginning setup and stuff, and the characters that you see are all based on, they're fictionalized versions of real people. Mm-hmm. And so when I was a kid, when I was really young, my parents were separated, and my mom helped manage a restaurant. And so she would work late hours, and we had a live-in nanny for a stretch of time. And I named that character after the character in the book, I named the character in the book after the real person. And she was like, like a parent does. I mean, we adored her, and my sister and I. And that premise in the beginning, when the kids come home and they discover that she had passed away while they were on vacation, was truly what happened. Like I think we knew she was sick. And for whatever reason, when we had gone on a vacation, she couldn't come, and she had gone on vacations with us. When we came home, we found out she had passed away, and we were obviously really frustrated by that. We're like, how are we just now finding this out? Right. We should have found out about this while we were gone. And I mean, your whole life gets upended. It's, you obviously are a single parent home, and now you have this parental like figure that you really love and you trust, and now she's gone. That's a lot of things, And I was searching for an idea to talk about. Excuse me, clear my throat.
Good.
I was searching for an idea that was like this, where I had the thing that I was getting excited about creatively was this idea of a group of kids trapped inside of a house with a monster. And I didn't know what the emotional hook was of that story until one day I was like literally driving to the DMV, and I was like, oh, what if I talked about when Ruby died? Wow. And then it all came together, and it became this interesting vessel of like, okay, I think I can be funny, I can be adventurous, I can be intense, but I can also leave people with hopefully something that is meaningful. Because a story doesn't really work for me until it's got something to say.
Yes.
And something to say has to, and like, when people talk about propaganda or these stories that feel like the reason people talk about these stories feeling like they're cramming a message down your throat is not because a story doesn't have something to say. Every story has something to say.
Thank you.
That is not what people are rejecting.
Right.
What they are rejecting is that you are shoehorning your ideology on top of what is naturally occurring in the story.
Right.
That's what they're talking about.
Right.
And so it's like, I came to watch this.
Right.
And that was cool, but then you also preached at me about a thing that was completely irrelevant to the story I was just watching.
Right.
And everybody does this, and people hate it almost universally, unless it's part of your tribe, and then you get excited.
Thank you.
But
the bias matters.
If you're part of that tribe, then you're like, yeah get them. And if you're not, then you're like really annoyed. But if your story is about that thing, right, and you're being honest to that thing, that's what people go to stories for.
Thank you.
It's why they come. They come. You go to watch when people say like, oh, the action was cool, but it was kind of stupid. It's because there was nothing there. Right. It
was hollow.
And so exactly. So like, I have a ton of great plot hooks, but if I don't have a point, then I don't have the story. And so that combination of a really cool premise that I vibed with, and this chance to even like revisit my own childhood, and then and this sort of monster that I was like, this will be intense and awesome. And then like, hey, I want to talk about this. It seemed like a great combination of things. Ironically enough, I was working on this during the pandemic. Come out of that, a lot of people lost a lot of people.
Yes.
And then as well, like in the last couple of years, we've lost a lot of people in life. And so in some parts, maybe it was also a preparation for life for myself as well. But unfortunately, talking about that felt important, to be honest with it. But not like in the way like Bridge to Terabithia does it, which I think Bridge to Terabithia is amazing. But that book is not about loss from the beginning. That book is about coping, like the shock of that. Right. Whereas this one, it's like, no, this happens in the beginning.
It happens at the very beginning.
All throughout. And it's the theme throughout. So how do we talk about helping kids learn to deal with one another? I actually visited a school where one of the students, there was 2 or 3 students who were in the group who had lost family members, I think, to COVID and then just illness. And one of the teachers came to me and was like, you might not want to talk about this a lot right now. And I was like, actually, I think we should talk about it. Because every kid in this room is with those kids, and they should know what they should be doing. And those people need to feel seen and be like, hey, I'm not. I've been talking with people who are going through loss. we have people who aren't going through it have a lot of misconceptions about what the person who's going through loss
Thank
wants.
you. Right.
Right. They're like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to make them uncomfortable. It's like, actually, no, you not talking about it makes them feel forgotten.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It makes them feel like you don't care about how they're feeling.
Absolutely.
And so, or that they should just get on with it, or whatever the case might be. And so, yeah, I kind of rejected that. And then we had a good conversation. I was like, no, we're going to talk about it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so
I love that.
And hopefully that's the thing that makes it stand out is, on its surface, it's a very straightforward story. Kids fight the monster trapped inside of a house. Yeah. But hopefully the thing that makes it people go, wow, I want to come back to that and again is that stuff. Loss is a universal experience.
I was hooked the moment I picked it up, and I was like, oh, because again, you didn't waste time telling us what it was about. Right. Mm-hmm. I made it to just after the funeral. Now I don't want to give it away. You guys need to read it. Okay. I'm going to finish it.
That's early on.
Yeah, that's early on. I made it to just after the funeral. And I knew immediately where you were going with it, which to me, I'm like, and again, I'm not the demographic, but I'm looking at the craftsmanship behind it. Right. You said something that again, my students, this is validation. So you heard someone, not me, say it. Okay. Story is king at Ka-Pow. When we have a 2-stage interview process, and we tell people this is not to teach you how to draw. Drawing is a vehicle for story, right?
That's right.
It's a vehicle for story. Story has to be at the wheel. Do you understand what I'm saying? Story has to be at the wheel. And the story's not served. If the art is not serving the story, then you have a broken product. Period. It's broken. And you said something powerful. It reminds me of Tolkien, who famously said, the creative thing that says nothing is easily forgotten. It's the message. We're always saying something. Right? If you're not saying something, people will dismiss it. The problem with a lot of the media, you said, and I'm sorry, because I normally don't even talk about I talk about this on my Christian creative channel. But the thing about being preachy with your message, that to me is a sign of incompetency. Right, when it comes to storytelling, because remember Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Right, you're trying to jam it down my throat, cod liver oil, right, and you want me to believe that it tastes like honey bun, right? Why don't you just kind of like hide it in the honey bun? Right? You give me what I want, put the story in it, and I take all of it, and guess what? I have to take the message as well. But you won't do that if you don't keep me tethered to a compelling story. A lot of what we're seeing in media today, again, it's not just like, well, I don't want to be preached. I'm like, well, creators were always saying something. It's the vehicle for our voice. Whatever the art is, sculpture, painting, illustration, dance, we're saying something. We're expressing ourselves. The differentiating factor is, are you skilled at it? So that I don't feel oppressed by the message you're trying to get to me, right? Yeah. When I released War in Paradise.
I have a question on that.
Yeah, please. No, don't do that.
So I almost feel differently, like because people will talk about this a lot, where they're like, I don't want the theme to feel like I'm being beat over the head with it. I almost feel differently. It's okay. Like, I want like a story. Like, I watch old Twilight Zones, for instance.
Me too. Yep.
It's my favorite show. Rod Serling's probably my favorite writer.
Grew up with it. Yep.
And all his episodes is like message.
Right.
Like moral.
Right.
It's not that I want you almost to beat me over the head, because I want to make sure I understood what you had to say.
Interesting.
Where I But where a good story does that is when it feels like everything in that story is constructed to tell that message.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is that if you're at a place in the story where you're not, like we were talking about Brian McDonald, like he would say
Mm-hmm.
something like, if you get stuck, think about, is there another way to say the thing that you're trying to say, or another way to present that thing?
Yes, right.
And so in showing shades of it, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
the complexity of human emotion is there. So like a good story has a theme that then the rest of the story is an argument.
Right, for that theme.
Argument of perspectives
Right.
on that theme, right?
Right.
And then ultimately a conclusion of like, what do you think you're actually trying to say to somebody,
Absolutely.
And so when you have opposing views and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I agree with that, and it goes back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I think a story continues to grind and become interesting. Like if you haven't gotten into the Sleepover, but like gotten this far in the Sleepover, but there are shades of that theme in our villain. There are shades
Mm-hmm.
of that theme in the other kids. There are shades of that theme in the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all grappling with loss differently. But
Right.
I want people to know, like, this is what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
But where it gets, I think where people get annoyed is it's like, I'm talking about loss, and then suddenly I want to have a monologue about, I'm going to just use an incendiary topic here, just
Mm-hmm.
to point out. But like, if I suddenly go on like a women's right discussion, it's like,
Right.
where did this come from?
Exactly. Right.
But
Right.
I think if the story is built around that theme and you're clear about that
Right.
theme, it should feel like catharsis at the end of like, you've
Absolutely.
given me the answer to the question. You know what I mean?
I don't think that we're at an impasse at all. I actually agree with that sentiment. What I'm saying is many creators today are not, they're writing, but they're not craftsmen. You have to be skilled at
That's
it.
fair.
You understand what I'm saying? Again, when we consider that we're always saying something, I was watching true crime yesterday with my daughter. I kind of end my day with true crime. You'd think I'd be over it after 30 years in law enforcement, right? But I'm watching true crime with my daughter, and the thing that really stood out to me was at the end of the closing arguments, they showed the opposing prosecution and the defense. The defense, in his closing statement, the man was eloquent and he told a story to the point where I had to rewind it so my daughter, my 27-year-old, like, watch this play out. You understand? Yeah. And then when the prosecution came up, he was clumsy. He was not eloquent. He was not engaging. And I said, look at the jury. Look at the people in the room. They started doing this. The body language. They were doing all of this. Well, when the defense was up, they were like this. They were leaning in. They were wide-eyed. It showed a stark contrast in competency. One guy gave facts and data. Yeah. The other one gave story with facts and data. Okay. He painted a picture, right? What a lot of creators are doing now, again, your theme has got to be consistent. It cannot be, I can't let you forget why you came here.
That's right.
Right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. Don't forget what we're really talking about. It has to always come back to that. What we oversimplify as the log line, right? What is the underlying thread that keeps you coming back? If it's not supporting that, toss it out, right? Okay? Yeah. And so don't want to forget that, but are you saying it in a way, are you presenting the argument in a compelling manner that makes me want to, in comics, the power of the turn, right? What's your turn action? What's going to make them keep going to the next page? That's what I'm talking about. Not that the message has to be clear, whether it's loss, whether it's the hero's journey, whether it's, becoming, what you've been called to be after a myriad of failures, whatever, whether it's discovery or finding the MacGuffin, whatever the thing is, right? Whatever it is, we can't forget about that. But how you take me there, that's skill. How you keep me engaged. And what we're seeing is in a lot of media today, because we have, I was watching I think it was Screen Rant here on YouTube, or it was or Film Culture, one of them, and they were talking to the writer. And he's, he's older like me, so I always have to temper that against being the old man in the room, right? But what he said, I did not disagree with. He said, it's not that the message is that doesn't matter. We just have people who don't know how to speak it that are writing. That's
fair.
And I'm like, thank you. It's not like the message. No, I will accept an opposing argument. Like, as a believer, I will sit and listen to an atheist or an apostate if they have a compelling position. You get what I'm saying? Right?
Or draw me into their human experience.
Draw me into your experience.
Yeah.
Take me on the journey with you.
Right, the story beats facts 100% of the time.
It does.
And that's why you see that, even just in culture, like grasping for the narrative, because people know if I can win you to my story, I can win you to my argument. And then,
thank you.
And so, I agree with you on that. So I apologize for my diatribe. But
no, that's okay. That's why this is a real conversation. That's the whole purpose of this platform. I want people to know these are real conversations. I love to be pushed back against. Again, been a cop. I'm used to people not agreeing with my position on situations. But no, absolutely.
I think it's mostly like I see a lot of people today talking about like, I feel like you're trying to ram a message down my throat. And I think the narrative has somehow become your story shouldn't have a message. Like, it's not message over story. Like, stories are message. So it's not, it's not that there's something else. There's a dissonance because on top of the message, you feel like you're being preached to about something else entirely. That's my assessment of what I think is happening.
Yes.
Is that I think people feel like on top of the story's theme, they're being preached about something that they didn't sign up for. And but to your point though, like the external conflict is the thing that makes me go to a movie. Like, I don't know that if I went to people and I pitched the Sleepover and I was like, you're going to go see a story about a group of kids grappling with the loss of a caretaker and learning to move on and accept from that, you'd be like, I don't want to watch that. But if I said it's a story about a group of kids at a sleepover, they begin to suspect the babysitter's a monster. Like,
that's different.
So
right.
It's both things, right? It's a powerful external conflict and a powerful internal message. Like, it's those two things together. And that's the art of doing this well, to your point, is like finding the marriage of those things and to where you feel like this is a good fit. And it's where I'll walk around for years trying to figure something out. Like with Deepwater Creek, I was at the end, Sleepover came together relatively quickly, but with Deepwater Creek, I was this story was born out of like things that were happening in my real life at the moment. And so I didn't feel like I had learned whatever the lesson was I was learning in life yet. And so I was like, I can't finish the story because I don't know what I'm trying to say, And then when I realized what I was trying to say and what I feel like I had learned from the experience I had gone through, it came together so fast, So there is an element of like a powerful external conflict and then knowing with clarity what it is you're trying to say. And when you can bring those two things together, it's like magic happens, it becomes so powerful.
I love that. And it is very powerful. Again, I'm just a fan of the medium, but when I see that it's well executed and again, I'm a data guy, right? The market has the final say. We know God has the final say, but commercially speaking, the market has the final say, right? Doesn't matter. You said it earlier. It doesn't matter how good the thing actually is if the market they don't read it, they don't watch it, they don't buy it, right? It's dead on arrival. But what I love about what you're doing is, again, when I see a kid that I know her habits, my granddaughter lives here, right? The only thing she does longer than then create little animations on her tablet is draw with me personally. And literally it's like, G-Bot, can we draw today? Reading,
That's all.
not a thing.
Not so much.
Not so much. She'll read if she's reading with me. I will say that. Like if I sit down and read with her, she'll snuggle up. Yeah. You know what I mean? And she doesn't want to stop. She's very a quality time kid, right? But to go off on her own and say,
grab it and go.
I'm like, where's that book I bought? My wife's like, Harper has it. I'm like, what? And that's when I sent you the pictures. I'm gonna put them in post, and I'm like, okay, she'll probably be putting that down in like 10, 15 minutes. Come back an hour later, and I'm seeing the page turn. The thickness. I'm like, where's she at? You know what I mean?
That's so good.
It was very telling to me, and I'm like, okay, he hit the target. And that's my whole thing. If you're not aiming, if you're not aiming, if you know what the target is, you're going to miss it every time. You know what I'm saying? So with your creative, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, please, feel free to talk. No, you are the guest. Go ahead.
Okay. All I was going to say there is it's so good to hear. So one, that's awesome. So tell her I said thank you. But when I write for kids, I said recently, it was like my philosophy of writing for children is I put kids in a story and then I try to never think about it again, because kids are people.
Yes.
And so they're capable of all the complexities that an adult is capable of. Obviously, there's content that we have to be careful with, and so I'm conscious of that. But that naturally comes out of me anyway. I don't have a desire to be incendiary or graphic, so it's very easy for me to slip into that space.
Right.
But I try to just treat kids like people. And so I don't try to ever talk down to them or make something that feels kiddie or feels like I made a decision because they're children. And so I'm like, go for, and I was kind of surprised by this with the sleepover because I've had one bad parent letter where someone was like, I can't believe you did this, that you should be ashamed of yourself. This was so violent and scary. And
she did say it was scary, and she's very scary. Here's the thing. I'm sorry to interrupt. She said it 3 times, says, G-Pod, that was scary, but I liked it. But here's the thing, and I'm not blowing smoke. I'm not that guy. She is terrified of her own shadow. I'm serious. Like, because of her, I have Asperger's, right? She has an autistic. She's on the spectrum. We know that. We just haven't had her, sounds, and she'll go out the room when a certain sound comes on. Right? If anything's remotely scary, she darts. She's gone. The fact that she said, G-Paw, it was scary, but I really liked it. I'm like, knowing you as I do, kid, right? I'm like, first I was like, how scary could it be? And if it was scary, that's why I can't wait to fully dive into it. I want to see, I want to attempt to see how she ingested it. You understand? Because I'm like, she's scared of everything. My almost to the point where it makes me angry sometimes. Like, Harper, it's okay. It's not going to hurt you, right? And so the fact that she couldn't put it down, I just wanted to respond to that. I'm like, I don't know, but we're always going to have detractors. That's always going to. You don't put yourself out there and not expect them. So please continue. I'm learning to not care as much about the detractors and just sort of be like, well, then it wasn't for you, right?
It's. So this is a whole other diatribe that we probably don't have time for at this point.
Okay.
But this might be an important thing for your students to learn. Something I am really becoming compelled by is that, like, we live in this amazing golden age of creativity and stuff is making its way out into the world.
Yes.
And part of the reason things are not succeeding is because everyone's afraid to stand out.
Yes.
Or they're so focused on just like doing the cool thing. I'm trying to put the words around it, but like so much stuff just feels like it's all the same.
Yes.
But the things that they're creating something where your voice is so clear that it's like that stands out from the crowd, that gets attention,
Right.
you know. Like it was my favorite filmmaker is M. Night Shyamalan, and you know, quirky guy, has some weird stuff in his filmography. But he was talking about this concept in the movie Trap recently, where he was like, people were trying to make a trailer for Trap, and they were trying to change it around and make it look like this very standard thriller. And he's like, please don't do that. He's like, the thing that people come to the movies to see me for is because they want to see my movie. Like, and when you take that away from me, when you make me not me, you've taken away the only thing that makes me stand out from the crowd.
Facts.
And so all that to say is, like, your students, you, me, like, lean into our interests and our things, but we still have to focus on, to your point, executing craft at a high level. So, like, the fundamentals are always the same. Do you know what a story structure is? Do you know how to tell an argument narratively from beginning to end? Like, if you can do those things well and kind of be a bit different, it'll find its people, you know?
Yeah.
And by different, I don't mean you're intentionally trying to make something weird. I just mean that you're not afraid. You're not making creative decisions because you're afraid of how other people will respond to them. You're making them because they feel right for the story, even if they're kind of quirky. I've wrestled with this a ton because Deepwater Creek, I think, is a very weird story, and I'm just hoping it works. I'm just hoping it works. It's like, you know, it was set out to be like a kid version of Jaws, and it just became this weird amalgamation of things. And so I'm hoping I'm partly soothing myself. But
I love that.
But to the point with the kid stuff, though, like I've said to, like, some other readers that are parents and stuff, like, my goal with my books, my horror books, is I want the kids to feel like they're getting away with something and the parents to know they're not. That's I love that. The fine line. That's the fine line I'm trying to thread, is like, if a parent saw it, they'd be like, this is fine. But the kid is like, holy crap, that was right. You know?
And it's funny. I think you did that because her response really piqued my curiosity. I'm like, what? You know what I mean?
I try not to hold back on the visceralness of, like, when I can't stand kiddie horror, but because, like, the elements that make something scary is not violence, it's not gore, it's suspense. Yes. And if you can harness suspense well, something can feel intensely scary and really not
tension release. It's not gratuitous. It's tension release. Yeah. That's really what we experience at our core. There is so much I'd like. We're gonna have to schedule a part 2. Quite honestly, I'm gonna have to pull on your time because I'm thoroughly enjoying this engagement. I'm sure they are too. I'm going to leave links to your channel and to your video, and check out the Sleepover, people. You can get it on Amazon. I got it on Amazon. Then I saw it at the library, and if it's any compliment to you, when you see something at the library and it's beat up, that means it's been checked out a lot, right? If it was like this at the library, and I actually went to the library to see it for that reason, just FYI, you know, because I'm like, if
anybody was picking it up.
No, that's how my brain works. You got to remember, recon as an Army veteran, tactical teams and undercover work as a cop. Recon is big for me. I do research. I want to see, you know, and that's I build with information. I'm like, okay, what are the masses feeling about it? No, I can't go interview a bunch of people, but I can go see if a book's been handled. Right? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's all the evidence I need. You know, this the spine broken, and are we have dog ears? You know, and it was audited at the library. I'm like, oh, okay. You know, so I'm glad I bought my copy. You know, but thank you so much. I would love to. We're gonna have to schedule another sit down. You have given so much insight. And I want to hear more because I have a whole list of questions and I didn't get to any of them, right? But that's okay. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. Conversations rocking, and I think that's what people really want to hear. Again, I believe the age of the influencer is dead. People want real information from people who know what they're talking about, right? And that's the core of Ka-Pow. I'm like, no, you're learning from real industry pros. I want to invite people here from various sectors of creativity Okay, so that wherever you fall, whatever you decide to pursue, you're getting true applicable information, right? That you can take, leverage, apply, course correct, whatever the case may be. So for aspiring writers, as we go really quick, do you have any recommendations for things that they may want to pick up or read or watch?
Yeah. Well, 100%. Brian McDonald's podcast, You Are a Storyteller, is if I'm assuming a lot of your group are people who are artists who are thinking about writing. That's usually
artists, and it's you and I are considered unicorns, and that's the truth. Like most people who know me, that know me intimately, believe it or not, I'm a writer at a higher level than I am an artist. For however you put me on the spectrum of art, for me, story has always been king. I'm the kid who read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein at 11 and Bram Stoker's Dracula the next summer at 12, and not because it was required reading. This was my summer break reading. I was that kid, right? And so story, I wanted to be able to illustrate my stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I draw because I wrote.
I draw because I write. I don't write because I draw, And so when people come to us, most of them want to tell stories, and people think that because they have an idea, they have a story, and I have to correct them many times. I'm like, there is a difference. Because you can write a letter doesn't mean you can write prose or narrative or a comic. Because you can send an email. Do you understand? Like there's a lot of skill that I think goes underappreciated in the literary craft. And so I just wanted to, hopefully that gives you some context of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, because there's a lot of artists that are just like, oh, the story is the easy part. And I'm like, man, story is like a whole other.
That's the hard part.
I just encourage people, if you are a artist and you're like, man, I would like to write. Obviously, we have to do both things. But if your art can be great, but if your story is garbage, it'll be forgotten. But you can have a great story in mediocre art and it still stay.
Have you watched this channel before? Have you heard me say, you literally just quoted me verbatim. And I didn't hear that from, that is crazy.
I guess it depends on what you want, right? So think of I won't name names, but there's a lot of amazing art that were made in comics in the 90s that people will still buy because they want the art. But how many of them could even tell you what the story was about? Because they didn't care, They didn't care. And so it depends on what are you trying to aim for. I want to create stories that are meaningful and last. And I hope improving my art is improving my ability to execute on that visually, right?
Yes.
So I know that the better I can as an artist tell the story I've told, more people will want to see. So all that diatribe to say, focus on story, 100%.
Yes.
Brian McDonald's podcast is great. You can either listen to it on things, and for whatever reason, it's become really hard to find on YouTube, but there is a visual version of it, a video version. I don't know what's happened with the algorithm, but it's like throttled it down. It's weird. Okay. But it's on the You Are a Storyteller is the name of the podcast.
Okay.
Belief Agency is his channel. And I 100% would recommend those. Also, Blake Snyder's book, the Save the Cat.
Save the Cat. Great. That's one of our required readings at Ka-Pow.
Yes.
They have to buy that before they start class. I'm now getting through Save.
It's a great primer.
It's a great primer. I'm currently going through Save the Cat rights for TV because I'm curious to see if it will help my students with the episodic nature of graphic novels and comics as opposed to.
I might need to pick that up too.
Yeah, Save the Cat rights for TV. But Blake Snyder, that is our students once they've been accepted, because we have an acceptance. Our interviews, you just can't sign up for Ka-Pow. Just FYI, people, you got to go through a process. But once they're accepted, I send them the list of required reading that we will be going through. And Save the Cat by Blake Snyder is one of the 6 mandatory books for Ka-Pow. Yeah.
It's chapters on genre and it's chapters on story beats. If those 2 things alone, like if you
and there's a workbook.
You write.
I don't know if you knew that. There's a workbook for it. Yeah, there's a Save the Cat workbook that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there's a supplement.
Things I got to go look for. But yeah, those 2 things I think are great places to start. And then I'll have to check out the TV one because the next thing I'm working on is a series idea. And so I'm trying to figure out like how am I going to maintain this and what's the philosophy about making it. But yeah, that would be it. And then honestly, again, completely focus on the things you can control. Your goal, you're going to be thinking about, oh, if I get this audience, oh, if I get these things, like you can't control that. You can put your work out into the world. You can hope it finds an audience. But one, you have to have work to put out into the world, so you have to finish. Mm-hmm. And two, once you do, you have to be a little bit ambivalent about the way the world treats your stuff. Like, hey, that one didn't work. Back to a lot of people will give up because it didn't go the way they thought. And I wrestle with those thoughts too. But get back on the saddle and just keep making. As much as you can, focus on the things you can control. Improving your craft, telling stories, finishing things. Those things have done more good for me. I'll close on this thought with that. So Adamsville 1, my first book, I look back on that and I can see so many rough edges in it, like so many things I would improve. But that book came out, didn't get a publisher, but it was done. And so people knew this thing existed.
Yes.
And while I was working on book 2, Webtoons saw that I had finished this, webtoons.com, this is when it was first coming around, saw that it was out and offered me a featured comics gig. And so it's like, so that was the first time I was being paid by a publisher or something, but that would have never happened had I not.
Had you not done it.
Just done the thing, you know.
Just do the thing.
Just do the thing. Like a finished book will do so much more for you than anything else. So
I'm a testament to that. I'm a testament. I've only finished one. And so we'll dive into that when next we meet. And so thank you so much for your time. You've been,
thank you,
man. I think I found another bro. Hopefully that is the case. Seriously, because there's very few people I vibe with in an interview. And this, after, again, 30 years of law enforcement, I dial into people very quickly. And so, because my life depended on it. And I thank you so much for sharing your experience and your knowledge. And we're definitely going to get you back for a second visit. And so, on that note, folks, we're going to check out of here. Remember, like I always say here at Ka-Pow, life is short. So live, love, and laugh as if it's your last day on earth, knowing that when all is said and done, when you leave here, all that will ever remain of you is the life you've lived, the lives you've touched, and the stories you've created. So, what are you waiting for? I'll see you guys later. Solo out.
Bye, y'all.
Ka-Pow.